You ever stop and think about how houses nowadays seem a little generic compared to the places we grew up in or remember from back then? It ain't just rosy retrospection, folks. Lots of nifty, practical, and downright charming bits and pieces of home design have just sort of faded away. Let's take a stroll down memory lane and peek at some features that really gave a house its character. Shoe scraper. All right, let's step back to a time when roads weren't exactly smooth asphalt ribbons. Wander through older European towns or early American settlements, and near the front door, you'd spot a tough little contraption, the shoe scraper. This wasn't just some decorative piece, it was a downright necessity. Before paved streets and cars were common, city thoroughfares were often a messy mix of dirt, grime, and plenty of contributions from our four-legged equine friends. Yes, that mud often had more substance. These scrapers, usually sturdy cast iron, gave folks a fighting chance to scrape the muck off their footwear before tracking it inside. Here in the US, some folks apparently nicknamed it Jerry's front door, perhaps feeling it deserved more respect. But as the 20th century rolled in and cars replaced horses, these practical tools began to disappear. During the World Wars, many scrapers, particularly in the UK, were pulled up for scrap metal drives. The sad irony is much of that collected iron reportedly wasn't needed and just sat in piles. And so, the useful shoe scraper quietly became a relic. Big front porches. There surely was a time when life moved slower and the big front porch was the heart of the home. It wasn't just architecture, it was a lifestyle. Think of deep porches with wooden railings, maybe fancy trim, perhaps a swing moving gently. That was your social network before screens dominated. Back then, especially in neighborhoods like Chicago's Near West Side, families gathered there in evenings to cool off and chat with passersby. Nobody had air conditioning, so sitting outside made sense. It wasn't just about comfort, it was connection. You'd wave hello, discuss weather, or tell a kid off the lawn, all from your porch. But once air conditioning became standard, porches started vanishing from new builds. Today, sitting out front watching folks might seem nosy, but once it was the spirit of the neighborhood. Picture rails. Picture rails are one of those wonderfully clever features of older homes you might not notice until you realize you have them. These slim molding strips, usually running near the ceiling, were the smart way to hang art without hammering nails into plaster walls. Anyone who's spackled nail holes or struggled with crooked frames knows their value. They were practical and elegant, allowing easy rearrangement of pictures, and the rail itself added refinement. If you have them, you're lucky. It's a hidden gem. Hooks just rest on a rail's top edge. While sleek modern hooks exist, maybe don't hang anything too heavy. Combined with bold colors, vintage furniture, and striking art, picture rails bring a room to life, echoing the past, maybe even improving on it. Luggage Hideaway, or card table nook. Ever explore an older house and find a funny little door next to a hallway closet? Usually narrow, maybe a foot wide, and short, less than half a standard door's height. You're not alone in wondering about its purpose. It clearly wasn't for hiding people. Digging into old house lore suggests these mini closets served a few functions. Some call it a luggage hideaway. Others insist it was for folding card tables or even rollaway beds. Honestly, they're likely all correct. Back in 1950s and earlier, card tables were common. Families used them for bridge, poker, or board games. So having a slim, deep space, maybe 3 feet back to stash one made sense. Whatever its name, that little door is a clever relic from when storage was about pure function. Got one? It's a piece of mid-century practical thinking. Secret room. Ah, the allure of a secret room. There's something fascinating about the idea, isn't there? Especially one hidden behind a bookcase or off a winding back staircase in an old Victorian home. These hidden spaces ignite the imagination. What would you use one for? Hiding valuables? An escape? Or just the thrill of knowing it exists? One famous example is the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose, California. Built in the late 1800s by Sarah Winchester, heiress to the rifle fortune, this sprawling mansion is legendary. With stairs to nowhere, doors into walls, and hidden rooms, it's said Sarah designed it to confuse ghosts of those killed by Winchester rifles. True or not, the house is a bizarre monument to grief, guilt, and imagination. In the Victorian era, secret rooms weren't uncommon, often for valuables or private retreats. But Sarah Winchester's might have served a far stranger purpose. Laundry chutes. Back in the day, many well-designed homes featured a brilliant little convenience hidden in a hallway or bathroom wall, the laundry chute. It seems simple now, but in mid-century homes, this was often standard. A small door, a quick toss, and dirty clothes vanished down towards a laundry room, usually in the basement. For busy families, it was a genuine time saver. During the 70s, the chute wasn't just useful, it could be fun. Kids loved tossing socks down, and occasionally you'd hear, "Honey, have you seen the cat?" Yes, curious pets and toys sometimes took the ride too. Mostly, it just made chores easier and slightly more entertaining. We might joke about clothes disappearing, but it was incredibly convenient. No overflowing hampers, no lugging baskets downstairs. Just one drop, and it was someone else's problem for a bit. Add suction today, and it'd be a modern marvel worth reviving. Dumbwaiter. Here's another clever invention from yesteryear that simplified life in older, multi-story homes, the dumbwaiter. Don't confuse these with large service elevators and mansions. Residential dumbwaiters were compact, practical, and usually hidden. Homes might have two types, one near the fireplace for hauling coal or firewood from the basement, saving much back strain. Another, more versatile type might run from basement to attic with doors in the kitchen, hallway, and maybe upstairs. These small lifts weren't just for show. They were useful for moving laundry, dishes, or supplies between floors without carrying heavy loads up and downstairs. Over time, many were removed during renovations, leaving clues like trapdoors or tall, narrow closets. Thinking of installing one? Maybe avoid complex electricals unless you enjoy puzzles. A simple, hand-cranked version captures the old-world convenience without the fuss. Transom windows. Transom windows are a lovely, subtle feature in older houses that quietly improve a space. These are windows set above a door or another window. Originally, before widespread air conditioning, they serve to admit more natural light and aid air circulation. You could open the transom to vent warm air, even with the main door closed. While uncommon in new builds today, mid-century homes use them effectively, perhaps over sliding glass doors or porch entries. Some custom homes even place them across multiple sliding doors. The effect was a bright, airy feeling connecting indoors and outdoors. You get glimpses of treetops and sky, bringing soft light into the room all day. Usually, no blinds were needed. They offered light and privacy simultaneously. It's a shame mass-produced homes often miss this built-in grace. If you have transoms, treasure them. They're little windows into thoughtful past construction. Home intercoms. Long before everyone carried a phone, the high-tech way to communicate across a large house was the home intercom system. Remember those? Wired into the walls, with a speaker box in each main room. On paper, a brilliant idea. Parents could summon kids for dinner without yelling upstairs. Kids could check in from their rooms. It aimed to make life easier. And sometimes it did. Of course, mothers found unique uses. Ours loved blasting the FM radio feature while cleaning. But honestly, for getting attention, good old-fashioned yelling often worked best. There was also the sneaky side, like locking the kitchen unit on to eavesdrop on adult conversations. And the startling side, like early morning wake-up calls using jarring recordings instead of music. Trying to remove one now, it's a wiring nightmare. Nowadays, we're back to the original wireless system. Stand and holler. Dinner. Still effective. Call it HollerCom. Conversation pits. Oh, the conversation pit. If you remember the 1970s, this was the height of groovy home design. Literally the center of attention. A sunken living area below the main floor, decked out in plush carpet or cushions. The idea was togetherness, encouraging people to gather, face each other, and talk. No phones, no dominant TV, just people, maybe fondue and conversation. Often likened to a mullet hairstyle, business around the edges, party in the middle. Jokes about empty indoor pools were common, especially with colorful cushions and shag carpet. Despite their cozy appeal, they had drawbacks. The constant warning, watch your step, usually came too late. They were tripping hazards. Plus, inflexibility was an issue. Rearranging furniture? Impossible. Changing the layout meant major floor repairs. Conversation pits faded, leaving memories some nostalgic, others maybe slightly bruised from a fall. High ceilings. If your home boasts high ceilings, congratulations. It's one of the most impressive, luxurious features possible. You'll never worry if that tall bookcase fits. But like all great things, they have literal highs and lows. Historically, lofty spaces signaled status and wealth. In Georgian and Victorian times, higher ceilings meant grander impressions. Before HVAC, they aided passive cooling. Heat rises, leaving living areas cooler for the wealthy. Lofts brought real fun, tossing laundry or snacks downstairs over the railing. Why not? The space invites drama. Tall curtains, enormous art, maybe even an indoor swing. But reality intrudes. That glorious 15-foot ceiling makes changing a light bulb an expedition. Elegant, yes. Practical? Only with a tall ladder and steady nerves. Root cellars. Root cellars, there's a practical and nostalgic blast from the past. Back through the 1970s and earlier, especially in rural areas or older towns, these underground storage spots were essential. Often looking like storybook hobbit holes with round doors and earthen walls, they felt quaint but were highly functional. Dug deep, they used the Earth's natural insulation for a steady, cool temperature year-round, no electricity needed. Families stored potatoes, carrots, onions, apples, and canned goods for months. It was nature's refrigerator powered by physics. Styles varied. Walk-in rooms under houses, simple pits in the yard. Some doubled as Cold War shelters. Modern fridges replaced them, but those who had one remember the ultimate pantry, great hide-and-seek spot, and a reassuring stash. Milk chutes. Milk chutes, those small, forgotten doors built into the sides of mid-century homes, were once part of daily life when a milkman visited regularly. More than just practical, they felt magical to kids, like a treasure chest refilled each morning with glass bottles of fresh milk, maybe cream or cheese. The design was clever. 2 small doors, one outside for the milkman, one inside for the family, with a small cavity between them protecting deliveries from weather and pests. Some fancier versions had dials for orders, a vintage take on today's online delivery. Milkmen were routine heroes, braving dawn, dogs, and weather. Today, most don't know what those doors were for, but those who grew up with them recall the charm. Now, repurposed or sealed, perhaps milk chutes could return in our home delivery era. Good design often resurfaces. Built-in ironing boards. Ever open a narrow wall cabinet in an old house and have a plank swing down unexpectedly? You likely found a built-in ironing board, a great space saver. These clever closets were essential when crisp clothes were non-negotiable. In the early to mid-20th century, having one tucked neatly in the wall, usually near the kitchen or laundry, was a homemaker's dream. A simple flick folded the board down, ready for action. No dragging out a wobbly board. It was always there, but they served other uses too. Kids saw pirate planks or forts. Grandmothers used them as extra counters. Stocked with starch and the iron, they were domestic Swiss Army knives, representing an era where convenience and tidiness were ingeniously integrated, making chores slightly smoother. Stained glass. Stained glass isn't just for old churches or grandma's door. It's a masterpiece of art, history, and craft, arguably the 1800s version of mood lighting. Before LEDs or smart bulbs, light itself was an artistic medium, and stained glass was a crown jewel. Initially for the wealthy elite in cathedrals and grand homes, skilled artisans pieced together luminous puzzles. During the Victorian era, a romantic medieval revival brought stained glass into everyday homes, adorning balcony windows or transoms. It offered beauty and privacy, letting sunlight filter in while distorting views. As the sun moved, vibrant patterns danced across rooms like living paintings. Public buildings like libraries and courthouses also used it for decoration and commemorating history or heroes. It turned light into art. Servant's staircase. Ever find a narrow, steep staircase hidden behind a door in a truly old house? You might have discovered a servant's staircase, a fascinating feature of Victorian-era homes. These weren't meant for display. Their purpose was invisibility. Back when homes had live-in staff, these separate stairs, tucked behind the kitchen or down a side hall, allowed maids and cooks to move quietly between floors without disturbing the homeowners or guests. It was the 1800s incognito mode. While a symbol of social division, these stairs were also practical for efficiency. Today, many are sealed off or deemed unsafe due to steepness, narrowness, and lack of modern code compliance. But finding one intact feels like stepping into a time capsule, and perhaps the perfect hide-and-seek spot. Just prepare for a leg workout. Kitchen fireplaces. Before stainless steel stoves and digital coffee makers, the kitchen relied on one central feature: the kitchen fireplace. These large, brick-lined hearths weren't just for warmth. They were the home's operational heart. Brewing coffee, boiling water, roasting chicken, the fireplace handled it all. On a cold morning, nothing felt cozier than sitting beside it while the fire crackled and cooking aromas filled the air. Kitchen fireplaces were built tough, with deep fireboxes and heavy iron equipment for large pots and spits. Before central heating, this was the family's winter gathering spot for chores, meals, and conversation. A wild historical tidbit: turnspit dogs, small canines allegedly used to rotate spits over the fire early rotisserie motors. This hearth was the center of activity, warmth, and connection. Push-button switches. Long before dimmers and smart bulbs, turning on lights had a satisfying click-clack sound, thanks to push-button switches, the ASMR of the early 20th century. As electricity became common, these replaced old pull cords, bringing function, charm, and a dash of flair. Each switch had two buttons, top for on, bottom for off, toggling with a crisp mechanical snap. Peek behind the plate, and you might see a small spark like electric demons awakening. Creepy? Maybe. Cool? Definitely. People adorned them with decorative plates in brass, porcelain, or mother of pearl, making a simple switch a statement piece. Yet, paired with old knob-and-tube wiring, they weren't the safest, prone to failure and fire hazards. Today's toggle switches are safer, but lack the soul. Push-button switches didn't just light a room, they illuminated an era. Mudrooms. If you grew up hearing, "Take your shoes off," you understand the mudroom's genius. This humble space was a lifesaver in old homes, a buffer between the outdoors and clean rugs. Designed to stop dirt, snow, and whatever kids dragged in, mudrooms were the MVP of cleanliness. Usually near a back or side entrance, they acted like a domestic airlock, keeping warm air in and grime out. The name isn't fancy, but the purpose was clear: stop mud at the door. A good mudroom had coat hooks, a shoe rack, maybe a bench for boot removal, and perhaps storage. No carpets here, just tough, easy mop tile or linoleum. Small? Yes. Stylish? Sometimes. Effective? Absolutely. It maintained peace and kept floors cleaner. Floor grates. Before central heating and HVAC vents were standard, homes used something far more charming: floor grates. These cast-iron beauties were the ancestors of today's vents, often found in older houses. More than functional, they were pieces of art. Ornate, heavy, with intricate scrollwork, they added elegance while letting warm air rise from below. Of course, for kids, they were irresistible portals for coins, marbles, and toys vanishing into the abyss. Some families view them as time capsules. Modern vents are dull and safe. Old grates had style, history, and mystery. Okay, here are the expanded descriptions for each point, adding more detail and context while keeping the original numbering. Built-in phone nooks, a dedicated communication space. Remember when the telephone was a hefty piece of equipment tethered to the wall? Many older homes, especially mid-century ones, thoughtfully included built-in niches or alcoves, usually in a central hallway. These little nooks were perfectly sized to hold the bulky phone itself, maybe a thick local phone book underneath, and perhaps a notepad and pencil. Some even featured a small built-in seat for those long, cord-tethered conversations. These dedicated spaces underscored the importance of the telephone as the primary communication hub of the household before the advent of portable devices. Often strategically placed in high-traffic areas like hallways or near the kitchen, the phone nook ensured calls could be easily answered and messages relayed. The design varied from simple recessed squares to more elaborate arched niches, sometimes lined with wood or tile. The inclusion of a small bench or seat acknowledged that phone calls could be lengthy affairs, requiring a comfortable spot. As technology evolved and phones became smaller and wireless, these nooks lost their original purpose, often being repurposed for displaying decorative items, holding mail, or simply being drywalled over during renovations, leaving behind only a subtle architectural hint of a bygone era. Ice doors, pre-refrigeration cooling. Spot a small, sturdy, insulated door on the outside of an old house, often near the kitchen, usually paired with a corresponding latching door on the inside wall. You've likely found an ice door. Before electric refrigerators were common, families used insulated ice boxes. This clever two-door system allowed the iceman to deliver hefty blocks of ice directly into the box's compartment from outside, minimizing mess and preventing precious cool air from escaping. This system was a crucial part of domestic life in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The iceman's regular delivery was essential for food preservation. The external door allowed him to replenish the ice supply without tracking mud or water through the house, maintaining household cleanliness. The corresponding interior door gave the homeowner access to the chilled compartment. These ice doors were typically constructed robustly, often made of thick wood or metal, and heavily insulated to be as airtight as possible, maximizing the longevity of the ice block. Finding one today is a tangible link to a time before widespread electrification revolutionized the kitchen and daily routines. Many have since been sealed up, painted over, or removed entirely. Pittsburgh Potties, function over form. Down in the basements of some older homes, particularly in industrial towns like Pittsburgh, you might encounter a rather stark sight: a lone toilet, often standing freely with no surrounding walls or even a nearby sink. This, folks, is the Pittsburgh Potty. Its purpose was purely practical, mainly for mill workers or miners returning home covered in grime, allowing them to clean up downstairs before entering the main living areas. This basement fixture emerged from the practical necessities of industrial life. Workers in physically demanding and dirty industries like steel production or coal mining needed a place to relieve themselves and often perform an initial cleanup immediately upon returning home, thereby preventing coal dust, grease, and other industrial residues from being tracked into the cleaner, main living quarters upstairs. Privacy was secondary to functionality, hence the frequent lack of stalls or even walls. While often lacking a dedicated sink, these toilets were usually located near a basement utility sink or laundry tub, which served for washing hands and clothes. Though named for Pittsburgh due to its prevalence there, similar functional basement toilets existed in other industrial centers facing similar sanitation challenges for their workforce. Knob and tube wiring, a shocking reminder of the past. Lurking behind the walls of very old houses, typically built between the 1880s and the 1930s or 40s, you might find knob and tube wiring. This early method of electrical wiring involved running individual copper wires, insulated with rubberized cloth, on porcelain knobs nailed to the joists and through porcelain tubes where they passed through wood framing. Crucially, it lacks a ground wire. The insulation becomes brittle over time, and it's generally considered unsafe for modern electrical demands. This pioneering wiring system separated the hot and neutral wires, running them parallel several inches apart. The porcelain knobs held the wires securely away from the wooden structural members, using airspace as an insulator, while the porcelain tubes protected the wires where they had to pass through joists or studs. While innovative for its time, knob and tube wiring presents significant risks today. The original cloth and rubber insulation degrades, becoming brittle and potentially flaking off, exposing live wires. It lacks a safety ground wire, essential for modern appliances. Furthermore, it was not designed for the heavy electrical loads of contemporary households and can overheat. Modifications or insulation packed around it improperly can create serious fire hazards, making its replacement a priority during renovations for safety and insurability. Ceiling beds, disappearing beds, space-saving innovation. While it sounds like something out of a cartoon, beds that lowered from the ceiling were a real, albeit uncommon, space-saving solution. Different from Murphy beds that folded into a wall, these disappearing or ceiling beds often used a system of counterweights and pulleys hidden above, allowing the bed platform to be raised flush against the ceiling during the day. Fold-down legs provided support when it was lowered for sleeping. This ingenious, though less frequently encountered, design aimed to maximize usable floor space, particularly in small apartments or single-room dwellings where living and sleeping areas needed to coexist. Unlike the wall-folding Murphy bed, the ceiling bed utilized vertical space. The mechanism often involves substantial counterweights concealed within the ceiling or attic space, connected via ropes or chains and pulleys to the bed platform. This allowed the bed to be raised and lowered with relative ease. When elevated, it ideally blended seamlessly with the ceiling, freeing up the entire room below for daytime activities. When lowered, sturdy legs, often hinged to fold away, provided stability. While a clever concept, the complexity, installation requirements, and potential maintenance likely contributed to their rarity compared to the simpler Murphy bed. Razor blade disposal slots. Out of sight, out of mind, but still there. Ever notice a tiny, mysterious slot cut into the metal back of an old bathroom medicine cabinet? It wasn't for secret messages or ventilation. That was a dedicated disposal slot for used razor blades. Back when men shaved with double-edged safety razors, dropping the dangerously sharp used blades into this slot, which typically just led into the empty wall cavity between studs, was considered a safer alternative than tossing them in the trash bin. Renovators beware. This seemingly innocuous feature was a direct response to the widespread use of replaceable double-edged safety razor blades popular in the mid-20th century. These individual blades were incredibly sharp and posed a significant cutting hazard if simply discarded in household waste, potentially injuring family members or sanitation workers. The disposal slot offered a convenient and, at the time, seemingly safe solution, dropping the used blades into the void within the wall framing. Out of sight, out of mind. However, this practice means that potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of sharp, rusty blades can accumulate inside the wall cavity over the years, creating an unexpected and dangerous surprise for anyone undertaking bathroom renovations or demolition work in older homes. So, which of these old-timey home features jog your memory? Did we miss any good ones you remember fondly, or maybe not so fondly? Let us know down in the comments section. If you got a kick out of this trip back in time, be sure to check out some other videos here on GoldDaysUSA. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you haven't already, and maybe share it with a friend who appreciates the good old days. Thanks for watching, folks.